We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain has gone.
Hey everybody, it's Boysen Hodgson. Welcome back to the Mankind Podcast. The podcast where we're setting out to prove, I think very successfully, that there is indeed more than one way to be a man. Today, I'm going to be spending some time with Melanie Weinberger. Melanie's with MindLight's, the emotional training company. We're going to hear more about MindLight as we get going. First, Melanie, just say hello.
Hello! I'm really happy to be here. And for everyone listening, when you visualize me, I'd love you to think of like a Tinkerbell with short brown hair. Because I'm very much a little pixie fairy, and I've got some really good sparkly magic dust for you today.
There we go. And that, I hope, will set the emotional tone and the energetic tone for the rest of the podcast. Melanie's been a leader in healthcare innovation since 2013. Her interest in the power of mind and emotions became deeply pronounced after 6 years of designing and implementing population-based wellness programs in companies across the country. She's been a keynote speaker with TEDx, at South by Southwest, at Google, at Johnson & Johnson, among others. She is an active private practice with clients who are working to heal trauma and experience ongoing self-actualization at compounding levels. We'll hear something more about that in the way that Melanie talks about helping people self-actualize. Melanie co-founded MindLight in 2018 with the mission of scaling emotional mastery skills within humanity. She's been a core member of the Google Vitality Labs group since 2019, which brings together the world's well-being impact influencers to build scalable programs for global health. And I'll say that I think MindLight reached out a couple of years to the Mankind Project because there's such a simpatico between the work that you all are doing and the work that we do. And then you recently reached back out and we got in touch and had a conversation, which was like, hey, let's get you on the podcast.
You know, I'm here. We're doing it. This is the magic moment.
This is it. And I don't know if we can talk about what's coming up with you, but like Melanie's work has taken her all over the place. And she was just sharing with me that like in today, this afternoon, you're leaving.
This afternoon. Oh yeah, this afternoon. I live a very alive, a vibrant life. And so yes. You will see me, I don't know about on TV, maybe one day, but in interviews in my turtleneck and blazer. And then you will also see me at Burning Man and at parties and living full, no rules life. And so what Boysen is alluding to is I'm going on a 4,000 person rave cruise called Friendship, where I will be officiating a wedding. And also completely sober. And so I actually just posted in the big social media group for this boat that I am available. If anyone needs some healing or grounding presence, I will be that for sure for every day of this cruise. So partying in service this coming week.
Background music. And Melanie's helping ground and heal and bring people down. So we're coming together today to talk specifically about trauma and more generally about emotional wellness and emotional kind of containers and containment and healing and all of those things. And the first place that you wanted to start is defining what trauma is. So let's talk about trauma.
Yes, the first thing I want to slow down with is when I say the word trauma. For everyone listening, I just want you to notice what happens in your body immediately when you hear that word. For me, I hear the word trauma and there's like a heavy, like a sit your butt down kind of feeling. Like, oh, there's something serious happening here. And at MindLight, we would love to just lighten it up. You know, I think in the psychology world, there's talk of big T, little t trauma. Big T being the big, scary, acute, terrible moment of something like a rape or a car accident, and little t being something like mom left me in the cart in aisle 3 for longer than I could handle, and it was really scary for me when I was 4 years old. And we say, no big T, little t. Scary things are scary things. And what trauma is, the way I'd like to invite you all to think about it, is really just an unresolved, overwhelming moment. And these happen all day, every day. Don't we get overwhelmed all day?
Yeah.
You're driving and someone stops short in front of you and your body gives you the full adrenaline reaction. And did you have time to sit there and give yourself a self-hug and calm yourself? Or are you late to work and that's just kind of sitting in your body now till you have time to look at it again? This is a trauma. Think of it as an unresolved moment, an unintegrated emotional experience.
Nice.
Unintegrated meaning it still feels like a separate thing from who I am right now. There's an emotional charge that is functionally separated out of my current operating system so that I'm not experiencing it all day, every day. So that I can still go to work, still hug my kids, still play with the dog. It's out over there. So this is how I want you to think about trauma. And at MindLight, we like to orient to it as treasure hunting. When we want to heal something. When it serves us to heal something. Because, and we'll get to this later in the podcast, how to skillfully approach something like this.
Yes.
When we do it, and we bring it into our body, metabolize the pain, essentially what we're doing is just bringing back in the part of ourselves that was stuck in that overwhelming moment.
Yeah.
Which is a part of our power. And so we're just reuniting with a part of our power, a part of our spirit, part of who we are. And now there's more of us here to be who we want to be. More united power to create with. And also what comes with it is wisdom, is a greater knowing about the world and who I am in it. How does that land for you as a definition of trauma?
Really good. Unintegrated emotional experiences. Yes. Reconnecting with those things and bringing back what's been disconnected. Love it. Yeah. Emotional charge, familiar language to those of us in the Mankind Project. That's something that we talk about in our circles. It's actually, we do a whole entire round in our men's group circles for emotional charges with, if we're sitting in circle to and walk through a process, if I have an emotional charge with somebody in the circle about whatever.
Oh, like a clearing. There's clearing between them.
Clearings, yes. Beautiful. That's exactly the word we use, yes. So clearings, love that. I'm gonna bookmark the fact that I do want to ask questions specifically about any distinctions that you run into working with men versus working with women, because of our social programming and the way we're taught to interact with things, because I had stuff bubbling up as you were talking about how trauma shows up in me and how I witness it showing up in other men in circles.
I mean, we could go there.
Yeah. Let's go there. Let's go there a little bit.
Go in there. Okay. Well, in my personal experience as a practitioner, the main difference I see is that men have less experience in allowing themselves to feel. And that's okay, because where we start is practicing allowing ourselves to feel. That's just where we start. Yeah. All trauma is healable, no matter where you're starting from. Biologically speaking, it can happen in any physical body. It's very important to know. So what it looks like in practice, like when I'm working with a client who is in a male body, identifies as male, is just a lot of staying in the head and storytelling, and trauma is a felt experience. Emotions are a felt experience. And so the way that you resolve a felt experience is through felt experience. So when someone is rationalizing, telling me why, in the blaming, all of that stuff, it's not that their narrative is wrong or that there's any problem with the narrative. Narrative is just speaking to an experience. What we actually need to do is have the body slow down and feel the feelings of the experience. And so a session, and this it's not the same with every man, but if you're
Right.
asking
Cool.
for a distinction that I see, that would be the biggest one that I see. There's a lot more slowing down and saying, hey, time out with the story. When you said the word burden, can you tell me, how did it feel in your body when you said it? And having them, we call it mindful focusing. Notice where in the body the feeling is. And what this allows for is the actual unfolding of the healing, when you can focus on the feeling. I believe that emotions come with messages, and they want to be heard. That part of you that was having that feeling wants to be heard, wants to be felt. And really what it wants, and by the way, this modality of healing, or the systems I'm going to share with you, happen naturally all day, every day. A kid gets hurt, the mom picks up the kid, rocks the kid. The kid starts to feel better, their nervous system starts to calm down. So these are things we do inside of ourselves in order to resolve the feeling. And in order to hug the feeling, first step is being in touch with the feeling. And so this is largely, in my personal experience, what I see in the difference between working with men and working with women.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There, as you were speaking to these are things that we do all day, every day, it just pops up for me that our bodies know how to do this.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
And our stories our narratives actually get in the way of our bodies being able to do this in some ways.
Ironically so. And it's like it's a real setup, because the mind-body connection can be of great service. And the reason why the mind does that is because when the body basically has two modes. Is this safe or no? And go back to like caveman times. Is it going to kill me, or are we safe? And if the answer is no, we're not safe, the mind gets that signal immediately, and the mind says, where's the threat I have to kill? Where's the tiger? Where's the ditch? Where's the whatever the unsafety is? And now we're in a hyper-focused stress reaction, hyper-focusing, where's the thing? I have to kill it. I'm not safe. I'm not safe. I'm not safe. And in modern day scenarios, it's an email that might kill us. It's a challenging email I'm reading that is completely sending my body into fight or flight. And the mind is working on finding the most intelligent way to kill the email, essentially. And so the way out of this, where emotional mastery begins in terms of survival emotions, is being able to disengage from the body's reaction using the mind. Is to be able to say, okay, my body's freaking out, and I am not my body.
Yeah. Separation.
Because otherwise the mind will follow the body, and this loop will keep going. And now we're trying to solve an emotional problem with intelligence. But it doesn't quite work that way. We solve an emotional problem with an emotional solution. We have to disengage from the emotional reaction in order to access creative, empathetic brain and be the rational, kind man or woman we want to be in response to that email.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. How true do you think it is when you look around email, right? Email is inspiring fight, flight, or freeze in so many of us all day, every day, right? Just tiny little minor things that are now the tigers in the shadows that are popping up. What do you think about the kind of current state of our culture and work? I kind of hold the belief that most of us are living in a traumatized state most of the time walking around these days.
From an emotional perspective, the way we experience the world is largely, in the beginning, learned and practiced. And then it becomes collectively practiced and collectively normalized. And in the paradigm you're speaking of, what we have been collectively practicing in the United States in particular is a culture of produce, produce, produce. Output is the highest value, higher value over well-being. And so that has us associating a high stress production state with achievement, success, validation, devaluing the body, devaluing balance. And so it's what we've been practicing. So what do? Practice something else. Start practicing something else. And from a corporate perspective, where this begins is the internal culture makers, the internal people who are the influencers, who are the leaders, and how are they living, and what are they pollinating the rest of the company with? And is the rest of the company consensually engaging in the environment? So you're starting to see companies now who are getting this to some degree, who have unlimited vacation time, for example. See it more and more and more. Older companies who are behind on this are, you start with 2 weeks vacation, and so you're enrolling in becoming a producer for the organization, and is the organization equally as enrolled in your well-being? And what are you consenting to in that relationship? Are you consciously consenting? Are you a yes for that? You're not a yes for that? So we have an opportunity to have a collective new practice for how we orient to what it means to be working. And also a collective opportunity to practice elevating the value of well-being above all other things. And recognizing that I am you and you are me. You hurt. I actually also hurt. Your well-being is my well-being. You are unwell and you work for me. That pain is experienced, first of all, through mirror neurons throughout the whole company, everyone who's on the Zoom, everyone who's in the meeting. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's an opportunity to practice. And again, from an emotional perspective, all emotions are this way. They are, number one, practicable. So we've been practicing one feeling for a really long time. We're just going to start practicing a new feeling. And just like training for something you've never trained for before, at first it's hard, doesn't feel safe. Can I really do it? Am I capable of it? I've never felt balanced at work before. Are you sure I'm not going to get fired? There's a paradigm shift available here, which is a rested, inspired worker is actually way much more of value than a tired, forced worker. And of course, this upsets a lot of paradigms of mass production and a lot of things that we're all consciously or unconsciously participating and consenting to in terms of the way things are produced in the world and the way people are labored, which again is all of us collectively practicing and saying yes to something. So it's uncomfortable and it's confronting also.
Yes.
But where you're really starting to see the shifts are, I would say, like small startups who are shifting it. I'd like to believe that MindLight is one of those.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
what we are collectively practicing, and what popped up for me as you were saying that is, and the personal ends up being very connected to the professional or work life, or, all of those things that we do as adulting. But I was taught very early on through schooling experience and family experience that the best way for me to get motivated was to be highly pressured into a state of anxiety that would have me get things done under pressure. And it's like that was driven by the education, it's driven by testing, it's driven by these kinds of, all the things that we teach our kids are not flow state. We don't teach our kids how to get in a wonderful state of engaged flow and exploration and play. We teach our kids how to get into a hyper pressured, anxiety ridden performance of achievement.
Well, let's practice something new together. That's what we used to do. That's how traditional school systems were designed. And there are new schools who are doing differently. Montessori schools, charter schools, who are teaching Socratically, teaching kids cooperation, teaching kids to only study what they're inspired to study. And I think those things are really inspiring. The older school systems that maybe you and I were born into, again, what collective practicing are we consenting to, and who designed that system, and why did they design it that way?
Yeah.
And are we awake to it or not? And so if we were raised in that school system, then we've been practicing the emotional biological cocktail of stress secretions in our living tissue for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 15 years, depending on who's listening to this. And just like we can get addicted to substances, we get addicted to our own. We get addicted to our own emotional chemical secretions in our body, and they become normalized. And so stress starts to feel more safe than relaxation. It can be scary to relax if you have a very strong practice that stress is where safety is, because when I produce, I'm safe, because when I produce, I get validated, because when I produce, I'm socially accepted, because when I produce, I get the raise. It could feel unsafe to say, oh, actually, I'm going to lean back and wait till I'm inspired to work. Could cause actually a reaction in the body. And we're also biologically unhooking from adrenaline. Adrenaline's actually exciting. Sitting on the edge of your seat, I'm on a ride, whether I realize it or not, that I'm maybe liking. Maybe now it feels boring to relax because I'm so practiced at adrenaline. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot in there.
Can any of our listeners identify with what is being spoken about right now? Welcome to my world. Yes, that adrenalized thing. And then, going back to speaking to men's work, I've been encountering men who, this is what we were taught, this is what's good for us. And the act of leaning back, as I just saw you do, and I'm just gonna wait and see what comes. It's profoundly uncomfortable for men. And we will actually enforce each other out of doing that. We will start to police each other out of leaning back and relaxing into our bodies, because it becomes it's somehow associated as feminine, somehow associated as less than to be at peace.
Yeah, I have multiple thoughts on this. First, I want to say that action is lovely. Being in action is a beautiful thing. And I'm not saying that being in action is bad in any way. I would love to touch in on the policing and the culture that you're speaking to, but okay, multiple things here. So first of all, the leaning back that you saw me do. That is actually a real practice. when adrenaline and stress are in your body, anxiety, any of those things, it is literally tugging your tissue and you'll feel it pull you forward. So the first thing I do, and I teach our students and my clients to do, is actually physically use your body as a metaphor to lean back.
Yeah.
Lean back in your seat, let yourself feel supported. The body and the mind, we talked about this earlier, they are an incredible team. And they will build momentum in a direction. And just in the way they can build momentum in a direction that is unproductive for the experience you actually want, they can also build incredible momentum in the direction of the experience you do want. And this is where we start to say using your emotion as creative fuel or as your ally, seeing emotions as allies versus liabilities. Emotions are just a big surge of energy and feelings in the body, which is money to invest in something. That's one way you could think of it. So the leaning back, I'm not saying like, hey, let's like quit our jobs, everyone, and go to the beach and don't pick up your kid from school.
Although that sounds, well, except for the last part, sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah. What I am saying is we have an opportunity to quit the energy of pain. So keep the goal that you want. If the men's group wants to build a house at Habitat for Humanity or build a house for whatever, I'm making up a project. Keep the goal, but don't live into the goal from a painful, stressful have-to place. Hold the vision of the goal and relax into a biologically homeostatic is not a word, but a place of homeostasis. The reason why we want to do this is because in this, I could say relaxed state, I could say balanced state, I could say open state, this is actually when we can allow inspiration in. This is when we get the insight. This is when we get the message about what's true for us. This is where creativity can come online. When we're in the stressed state, the hyper-focused, stressed, must-produce state, in that essentially fight or flight response, even though we might not think we're in it, the creative centers of the brain are much more shut down. Our capacity to be empathetic is shut down because the body thinks it's going to die, and so the mind doesn't have time for anything. The mind is, we're in protecting mode. When we disengage from that, who am I really? How do I really want to feel about building this house? Oh, it's inspiring. It's in service. I get to be a leader for men I care about and show them what's possible. I get to help a family have a home. Oh, this is an opportunity for us to come together. I wonder who else on the team would love to lead. I wonder how we can do this differently than we did this last time. All now the brain's open to releasing.
Yes.
We're actually in alpha brain waves versus beta brain or monkey brain. So it's not quit everything and take a nap. It's disengage from the pain of the journey you're on. Does that make sense?
100%.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
In that dialectic between, and this, it's great that you made a project out of it, right? We're doing something together. And there's a distinction between insistence or domination of a narrative that my mind is used to and my training is used to, and I am the leader and I am going to dominate. And then you went immediately into the opposite of that, which is openness and curiosity, rather than I'm going to insist on who I am because this is my narrative and this is who I am. Who am I now?
Yeah. The other main body of work that we teach and study at MindLight is what we call human potential, which is the infinite allowing of the blossoming of the you in every moment. The infinite amount of hats and identities you can try on and express for the sheer enjoyment of the experience of expressing. I just, prior to this, got off a call with my coach. By the way, I think everyone should have a coach. Coaches are so helpful. It's so helpful to have a buddy. who sees the best in you and helps guide the mind and the body. Anyway, so my coach, I just got off and he said, you know what you are? You are what you love. And that's it. That's what you are. And of course, there's so many different ways to say, what am I? But I loved that one. I thought it was so simple, and there's so much permission to relax into just the truth of what feels good for you. And so much of personal growth, personal development is really about, and this infinite potential is really just about allowing, being a yes for yourself, reducing the resistance to who you are, disengaging from what society, the collective thing we're practicing that actually you don't consent to.
Yes. Back in business terms, opportunity costs, right? There's business language. But what does it cost us as individuals? What does it cost me? What does it cost men to be locked into saying no to that all the time? To saying no to other possibilities, to saying no to other ways of expressing, to saying no to having emotions, having emotional experiences. Lots of men, like, there's a fundamental, like, oh shit, emotions are dangerous. I'm going to continue to lock down just having emotional experiences.
At MindLight, we say all feelings are good feelings. It's one of the core, we have something we call the 5 truths, which are, so at MindLight, we train practitioners, and we also work with people one-on-one. In the practitioner training, we teach the 5 truths to our future coaches and facilitators. The 5 truths, I'll say them here. One is, there is a presiding well-being. This whole life thing we're doing is built in some beautiful, benevolent balance. And there's a lot of different ways you can say that depending on your personal mythology and beliefs. Truth number 2, we are all connected to this well-being, and we are all connected to each other. This well-being flows through me, flows through you. It's what I am made of. Truth number 3, we are infinitely powerful because of this connection. You are infinitely powerful. This connection to this incredible benevolent balance, or you could say universal love, or you could say God, if that's a word that feels good for you or a belief that you have. And imagine, you could think about collective power here, infinite power. Think about Martin Luther King. Think about Mother Teresa. Think about any great leader who coalesced through community, which is what mankind is, which is why I'm so honored to be here and so respect so much the work you guys do. Because through tight-knit community, the collective change that's available is some of the most momentous collective change, which always starts in the heart of one, spreads to the heart of 2, who bring in 2 more, who bring in 2 more, who bring in 2 more. So truth number 3, we're infinitely powerful, starting inside your own body through this connection to well-being. Truth number 4, all feelings are good feelings. And we say this to say, all of you is good. There is no part of you that's bad. The sad part of you is good as an innocent part. The angry part of you is good. That part of you needs to be heard, has something to say. Don't do harm with the anger, but feel it, listen to it. What's it need? Punch some pillows. Like, let's go. Let's let it out. All feelings are good feelings, so we can integrate, scoop up all the parts of ourselves united. Create united inside me, not having partitions of me fighting with each other. All feelings are good feelings. All parts are good parts. And truth number 5, we create from the inside out, or our inner world gives us our outer world. Our personal set of experiences, beliefs, learnings are essentially like a projector projecting out onto the world, showing me the reality that I've designed inside. And this is perhaps, while one offers an annoying amount of responsibility to everyone, 2 offers an incredible amount of empowerment, because it says, anything that you're experiencing out there that you don't like, let's go in here, see where it comes from, that we're creating a dissonant experience for ourselves, and how can we shift it. So that was all that from saying all feelings are good feelings. It's feeling Feeling is where power is.
Feeling is where power is. Thank you. Yes. In practice, I think that's where we're moving now. In practice, what does this look like?
Healing, specifically trauma, which again, let's call them unintegrated emotional experiences or moments. And you can find trauma is usually what negative patterns are rooted in or unproductive patterns are rooted in. It's what pain, if I'm experiencing carrying heavy weighted pain, it's what it's rooted in. So we want to loosen up those roots. There's a three-part formula, we'll call it, for healing it. And then we'll demonstrate it together. So the first part, and we covered this extensively, so now it's like perfectly landed. The first part is being in touch with the feeling. To feel the feeling. Being in touch with the emotional wound. 2 is meeting that wound with compassion. Or we can say loving attention. Or we can say expressing it in a safe space. And step 3, and this step is what is missing from most talk therapy practices, and why talk therapy is something someone can do for 10 years and not really fully resolve something. And I think therapy is great, but just know and use what you learned today if you're working with a therapist to help make your personal work more effective. Part 3 is making it meaningful to the body. We have to incorporate the body into the practice because trauma is stored in our tissue. So it's the body that's having the experience and the body that's telling the brain to make meaning and that this is safe or unsafe. And so what that looks like is at MindLight we use tapping a lot, EFT. And for anyone who's listening, I'm currently right now using the tips of my fingers to tap along my chest bone right below my collarbone. This is one practice we do. This helps. It's like I'm tapping on acupressure points that reset the breakers, if you will, in my body, telling it, hey, the electrical overload actually isn't, it's safe. We can breathe through it. You can shake. You can rock or hug yourself, stomp your feet, punch pillows. You can dance out anger. You can dance through something. You can run, so the body is the last component. So these 3 things together are, when these 3 things are present, we are creating a healing environment. Now with trauma specifically, the most important skill is the pace by which we're approaching the thing. And this is probably what our practitioners get trained in many, many, many techniques, but this one is what gets given a lot of technique, a lot of modality, because trauma has a gravity to it. It's like a vortex. And you want to create a lot of on-purpose titrating or spacing as to how much pain we're inviting into the body at a time so that the body can metabolize it well and integrate it well. I like to tell my clients, okay, we've got a big cake, and in each session we're going to take 1 bite, we're going to chew really well, we're going to swallow, and when we're ready we'll take another bite. So you don't want to, let's say someone's got a really scary acute incident that they'd like to heal from. You don't ever say, tell me all about it. Yeah, because then we're opening up, we don't know what level of intensity that pain is. If we don't have any skill to bring them out of the pain, now they're going to stay open. They could stay open for a year, not knowing how to resolve that pain. So it's so important to have practice skill in approaching this work. But if you're working with yourself, go slow. Go slow.
At this point in the recording, Melanie and I went on to do a demo using me as an example. And the topic that I went into in this discovery process was to talk about my relationship to food. And because of the way that went, because of the vulnerability that I shared there, and also because of just how kind of slow and intentional that process was, it went on for some time. And what I want to come back, and this is several months later now, I want to come back and just kind of talk about what that experience of diving into my own history and trauma and kind of beliefs about myself in relationship to food, how that has come out a handful of months later after having this experience. As you heard in the 3-step process, contact with that part, right? And embodying it and getting in touch with it. So we went through that process, and I ran right into that little boy. That was me when I was a little kid, when I began to really develop my relationship with eating, my relationship with food, my relationship to beliefs about my own body. That's a tough, vulnerable place for me to step into. And I was aware at the time that because we were recording, there was some part of my consciousness that wasn't allowing me to actually fully go into the vulnerability of that space. And I've had some more time to kind of work with that. And here's what I want to say. Going into that space, what I recognized later and what really came clear to me over the following weeks after doing this session with Melanie was how much disdain and disappointment and dislike I was still carrying for that little boy. That little boy who did what he did to survive and did what he did just to try and get along in a world, in a family, in the way things were going that felt out of control and that felt chaotic. And now as an adult man, there were still parts of me that I was carrying, still judging that little boy. And so the piece that got opened up with Melanie is something that I've had to go back to and continue to work with to find a different kind of compassion in me and create different kind of experiences, different beliefs about myself in relationship to what came out in talking about food and my relationship to food. So I'm very grateful that this process helped me open that up. And I'm also grateful for the way that it has over time been shifting my relationship to eating and keeping that relationship and those beliefs more in my consciousness, so that I've been able to actually make some significant changes in what I'm doing on a daily basis that are more honoring of who I want to be in the world, more loving, more compassionate toward my present self, and more loving and compassionate toward that little boy who was me, doing what he needed to do to survive in the world, just like you are, and just like I still am today. So I'm grateful to Melanie for giving me that opportunity. I encourage you, as she said just before I did this interlude into the episode, go slow. That's the big realization for me in this process, is going slow and really taking time to do a little bit at a time in this healing work that we are all committed to doing, to find new ways of being in the world. And boy, loving myself is worth it. And you loving yourself is worth it. So we're going to go back in, and when we go back into the episode, it's going to be a pretty abrupt jump to the end of the episode. And I thank you for listening. I'm grateful I had this opportunity to do this session. And I hope you enjoy the rest. Getting to the end of our recording time here, I know that you want to talk a little bit more about MindLight. So tell us what's coming up with MindLight, because this is a skill. You've given us 5 truths and 3 steps in this podcast. How would somebody learn more?
Well, visit our website, themindlight.com.
Major energetic shift there just occurred. Yes.
Promo Mel is online.
Yes.
Healer Mel just walked out of the room. Promo Mel just sat down. THEMINDLIGHT.com. If you are a leader, if you identify as a leader or healer or facilitator amongst men or amongst the world, we would love to train you in this work. And we are enrolling our next cohort into the course we call Trauma Integration Level 1, which is an 8-week live course with a live trainer. And you can go to themindlight.com/trauma1. You can also sign up for our newsletter on that website if you scroll all the way to the bottom. If you do that, you will get emails inviting you. We offer free trainings frequently, and we'll be doing free introductory trainings to trauma integration, where we'll dive even deeper into what is this whole trauma thing, how does it live, breathe, and work, and you'll be able to witness even more demonstrations. Additionally, if you're like, yeah, I'm not a facilitator, but I need a session, we would love for you to receive support, and we offer one-on-one private sessions for individuals. So if you go to themindlight.com, and right there on the homepage it says book a session, you can book a session, and we have practitioners at varying price ranges. We have senior students who are in year 2 of our institute who you can book with. That is the lowest rate at $100, I believe, all the way up to the trainer of trainers, which was me and my co-founder, who are at a higher level of expertise, higher rate, depending on what you're looking for.
Thank you. Look for all of that in the show notes down below also. And Melanie, I'll give you the last word, but I want to say pleasant journey, bon voyage on your
my rave cruise wedding.
Your rave cruise wedding.
Thanks.
It's been a pleasure hanging out with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for being a role model, and for making this work visible, and for all the work that you do and all the men in the Mankind Project do in the world. It is definitely what's needed. Thank you so much for your service.
This has been the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. I have been your host, Brandon Clift, and I personally want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. Now, the fee for this episode is simple. If you found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, remember that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us, so long as we rip the pen out of fate's hand and become the author of our own story. So my friend, pick up the pen and we'll see you next week. Lots of love.